welcome to Next. Everybody is coming in from the keynote. I am super excited to connect with you today. A long time ago, a buddy of mine and I sat down and wrote a little paper to propose this event. So you're at my party. Welcome to the party. So happy to see you all here. Today we are going to unpack a pretty incredible story, a legit, real-world AI revolution and operational quality story inside one of the most iconic consumer brands on the planet. Has anybody heard of Mattel? We are incredibly proud here at Insight to have been chosen to work with Mattel on their AI journey. We're going to dive into how my company helped Mattel replace a super manual data analysis process using the power of Google's AI and saving their teams just tons of time. I want you to meet the guy that drove this transformation at Mattel, so please join me in a huge round of applause. Let's bring out Chief Safety Officer and SVP of Product Safety and Regulatory Compliance at Mattel. That's Joseph Vinhais. Good to see you. I'm there. Joseph, thank you so much for being here today. Why don't you give everybody like a quick intro? Say howdy.
Thanks, Miles. It's great to be here. I'm sure you've heard of Mattel. If you've not, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Uno, those are the brands, right? And so quality at Mattel is an infrastructure where every business in the priority runs. We protect consumers, we protect our brands, and we protect the market access. Because if a product fails, a regulatory requirement or a safety standard, the business just doesn't run, right? We don't ship the product, the brand takes a hit, and then the retailer relationship suffers. So this is not just a commercial problem, it's a compliance one. My organization spans product quality, engineering, global consumer services, product safety, regulatory compliance, even distribution logistics. That breadth is intentional because a quality failure doesn't respect functional boundaries. A decision for upstream actually affects a consumer complaint downstream. Our job is to own that entire full signal chain, right, from the factory floor to the consumer's living room. Well, my background, whether it was in aerospace or medical device, it's really highly regulated, and even toys. And what it's taught me is one clear thing. Quality is not just a cost center. Managed well, it's actually a margin protector. It's a brand differentiator, and really a speed enabler. I know you're gonna laugh, right? Quality, regulatory, speed enabler, but that's what we wanna be, right? So the lens that I brought to Mattel is really around that anchor line that quality is not a constraint. It really is a strategic advantage. So most people know our brands. I mentioned them: Barbie, Hot Wheels, Fisher-Price, Uno, Masters of the Universe. Movie's out in June. Make sure you go. What we don't always appreciate is the scale behind them, right? So Mattel operates around $5.5 billion in annual revenue across 100 manufacturing and co-manufacturing sites worldwide. We have certified independent laboratories, a supply chain that actually spans thousands of suppliers across the entire globe and across geography. What we connect is with hundreds of millions of children and families globally every single year. So here's a video just highlighting some of our exciting brands.
Okay, so Joseph, look, some of our attendees know, you can even say it along with me if you want, maybe you're a Barbie girl in a Barbie world, but you're kind of, a Joseph guy in a quality world, which is like maybe not quite as fun. What does that look like for you? How do you actually approach that?
Well, to put it in perspective, let's understand scale. So just give you an idea. Just one of our Hot Wheels plants will make 220 million Hot Wheels in this year alone. Just put that in perspective. No other car manufacturer does that.
Just dunking on Gio.
Yeah. So when you operate Mattel scale, quality and safety are just not functions. They're actually foundational to the business. We're talking about billions of products in the market across brands, regions, and channels with millions of consumers interacting, coming through online reviews, contacts, returns, and social signals. That consumer voice, constant, it's global, and it's highly dynamic. Our responsibility is to make sense of all that scale and translate it into action. So what that means is building a systems that could actually ingest and connect that data across the entire product lifecycle, from design and manufacturing through the consumer's experience. It also means ensuring that data, right, is not delayed and it's not siloed, but we deliver it in a way that the teams can actually act on it quickly and confidently. When you treat quality as data and an analytics problem, not just a process, it really becomes a competitive differentiation. So it allows you to move from reactive to proactive and increasingly to predictive. That shift is what elevates quality from just a requirement to a true strategic lever across the company.
So before we get to the shiny AI and cloud architecture, yes, I promise we are going to geek out. I know you guys had sort of a major inflection point where you kind of had to reinvent the analytics system and the group that built all of this from scratch. How were you figuring this out before? Like, were you, was it like pen and paper, you're scratching notes? Like, take me back.
So, Miles, it's not too far off from the truth, right? So you can see from the screen behind me, the challenge was keeping up with all the volume of feedback. So teams are literally reading through individual consumer complaints. They're looking at comments one by one, categorizing them, trying to bucketize them, then actually trying to track the use case themes with handwritten tally sheets like you see behind me, or even just Excel spreadsheets, right? So it was a very human, very effort-intensive process that relied on individual judgment. And we couldn't scale, right? The growing volume and the complexity of the data. So here's the thing about that scale. If you look at just our 5 strategic initiatives, right, and our priorities, growing toy brands, expanding direct-to-market, scaling digital play, broadening content and licensing like movies, and then even trying to optimize operations. It all depends on quality and safety performing at the highest levels. So if quality fails, unfortunately, the strategy fails. That's not a support function relationship, right? That's actually a strategic one.
So, even though it's clipboards, the business loves it, right? You've got the right answers. You've got the feedback. You're delivering this incredible intelligence to figure out how to make better Hot Wheels, better Barbie dolls, but then you kind of, you hit this scaling wall. You can't meet the demand of, I'm sure this became kind of a runaway need in the business. Global scaling and taking notes with paper and pencil doesn't really scale, right?
No, Miles, that's exactly. So if you kind of think of what happened, right? The business reaction was the first signal that we were actually onto something, right? Our team saw real consumer insights coming through. They just didn't just appreciate them, they started demanding them. They started depending on them. Design teams, brand teams, leadership. Everyone wanted answers, and they wanted them faster than we had ever delivered before. At the same time, the retail environment, as we all know, shifts, right? It was all online. Instead of physical returns, looking at e-commerce taking over, consumer voice, moved on to online reviews, service contacts, all digital feedback. We went from looking at dozens of physical items to actually thousands, hundreds of thousands of consumer signals across brands and regions. That's what I call the success problem. Not whether the insights were valuable, but how quickly the organization could no longer operate without them. That is the reason we were able to respond, because it wasn't just a one-off experiment, right? We moved from inspecting products physically one at a time to actually listening to the consumers at scale. And once the business experienced that, there was really no turning back.
Sure. So what was the tipping point where you realized you needed sort of a new architecture, a new technical system to move from these ad hoc answers to delivering the kind of consistent quantitative metrics that everybody's going to need?
That tipping point really came with the velocity of the business. As it accelerated and our ability to keep up with it didn't, right? The demand shifted from ad hoc qualitative answers to faster, more consistent quantitative insights. So the leaders really wanted to rely on data to make decisions. So we were not data poor, right? We were speed poor. And that gap started to risk the trust. So at the same time, the business itself was actually evolving quickly. our existing approach could not adapt and could not keep pace. It really became clear that incremental improvements just wouldn't be enough. So we needed a fundamental difference, and that was the architecture. We needed to deliver speed, consistency, and scale in how we turn that data into decisions. So take our newest business, Mattel 163. It's a great example. We build and operate mobile games now like Uno, Phase 10, at pretty massive engagement, at least from our perspective. 20 million monthly active users, 550 million downloads worldwide. This is a relatively new space for us, and it represents a significant opportunity to extend and how we leverage the data. So we now have a growing, rich source of data, real-time consumer interaction that goes far beyond traditional product feedback. It creates a powerful opportunity for us to serve the broader organization with data, connecting digital engagement with physical product quality and unlocking a much deeper understanding of our consumers. Let's take a look at our Uno video on our latest Mattel 163 platform.
Uno!
You know it.
I think my favorite card is Festive Nap. That sounded perfect. Okay.
Goes with your jacket.
It does go with the jacket. Okay, it's time for audience participation. You heard what Joseph said. We are data rich, but we are speed poor. Does that feel like you? You feel like you've got lots and lots of data, but maybe not a way to put that in gear. We expect that that's true for a lot of businesses. So you realize that you need to scale, and you got to go fast because the toy market is every day. You could have gone out and bought some off-the-shelf, black box analytical service maybe, but you decided you want to build this solution. In your customer feedback classification tool, you tapped my team to help support you with that. Let's talk about that build versus buy. Did owning your data play into that as a driver of the decision?
It really did. The build versus buy decision really came down to one thing: data sovereignty. When you're running consumer sentiment analysis at the scale that we operate, across reviews, across transcripts, call centers, social signals, warranty data, the data itself is the asset, right? So it's not just about an input to the model. So it's years of structured consumer intelligence, really around specific products. And think about what we capture: failure modes, the quality taxonomy. No off-the-shelf vendor could really understand that context. So critically, and no off-the-shelf vendor really could be trusted with our proprietary consumer data that we both have a legal and ethical obligation to protect. But building our own model in-house on the governed Google Cloud architecture meant we could control the data, the taxonomy, the validation process, and could audit every single output. So for a function that reports to the board of directors on product safety metrics, that's not just good engineering, right? That's a non-negotiable governance requirement. And the payoff is real. Once you move from months to minutes, right, the real question becomes, what do you do with that speed? So we used to go from reactive to proactive. And of course, we all want to get to predictive. So we wanted to catch issues before they scale. We wanted to inform product development decisions in real time rather than after the fact.
Okay, we're about to get to the agent mechanics, but let's talk about the constellation of the team that pulled all of this off, because I think it's really a huge part of your secret sauce. They are all maniacs. Several of them are here. Everybody say hi. So many teams would be dependent on, say, an IT department to build something like this for them, right? I don't know if most shops would say quality is where we built our engineering function. But you guys did this totally differently. You essentially built a totally technical squad inside the business unit. Talk to our teams here about their roles and responsibilities.
I'm super excited about the team. The team is amazing, right? So it really starts with best-in-class teams across my organization who are really deeply focused on collecting and using the data the right way. That foundation is really what enabled us to understand the analytics and to move with speed and confidence. With a data-first mindset is really what we built a platform around for stability and to be governed and to be trusted, ready for the business to leverage, like with things like self-service, advanced analytics, and model deployment. That investment put us ahead of the curve while AI was accelerating over the past couple of years. At the core is a really small but highly effective team. When you think about it, we brought together data engineering, BI development, analytics, and data science. That combination of capabilities embedded directly into the business is what allowed us to operate with agility, stay close to our stakeholders, and deliver impacts quickly. Our analytic engineers, they started building and maintaining the data foundation, right? So things like the pipelines, the data modeling, governance, and performance. They made sure the data was not just available, but it was reliable and production ready. On top of that, our BI developers and our analysts translated that data into something the business could actually use, right? So things like scalable dashboards, standardized reporting, self-service tools. That way it reduced the dependency on any single team. At the same time, our data science and our AI leads were working in parallel, not downstream, right? Because the foundation was already in place, we were able to immediately start building models, experimenting, integrating AI use cases without waiting months for infrastructure to catch up. That collaboration with Insight and the Google Cloud was critical in accelerating this. Instead of a vendor-client dynamic, right, what we used Insight is really an extension to our internal experts. Your teams brought deep expertise in cloud architecture, the best practices, the scalability, while our teams brought business context, right? The reason, the data understanding, and clear use cases. So we worked together really in closed feedback loops. We whiteboarded everything together, rapidly prototyping, validating the real data, and then productionizing it quickly.
So look, I work across thousands of businesses, and I've been screaming from the rooftops. If you have not heard me say this at the last, previous, next, for the decade we've been doing this together, that data is the lifeblood of companies. It is the new oil. So, I think people imagine that maybe this is just going to get delivered from on high, like AI is going to get sprinkled over the top, and all of a sudden your data will be clean and tidy. And I'll hint, like, the AI is actually the easy part, right? We keep doing amazing work if and only if you have your data in order. So all the AI in the world isn't going to make a difference if you don't have the structures that you put in place. You guys had exactly what you needed from the get-go to make AI work, and all the right data and structured processes. You had that all built up?
Yeah, so AI may be easy for you, but I'd say it really wasn't the easy button for us, right? So it actually exposes two critical things. One, how ready and how, more importantly, unready your data and processes really are. As you start building for AI, that gap becomes really clear very quickly. We had been investing in our data foundation and governance and structure well before AI became a priority. We needed that digital mindset to be there. So while our data was not and still not perfect, we had the core building blocks in place. That allowed us to move quickly, to evolve, and we leaned into that. In a quality organization, you naturally have a high degree of structured processes. I have lots of QSOPs. Right? And we have lots of data, significant volumes of data and processes all across the product lifecycle. We leaned even more into that and tried to learn all that data. Instead of waiting for perfection, we focused on building the foundation that was scalable, where data domains could be added, they could be refined, and even connected over time. That combination of structured processes, an existing data footprint, and a team already thinking digitally meant that we were not starting from zero. So we were able to plug into that. We identified the gaps quickly, but you have to iterate. The ultimate thing that made AI deployment successful for us, at least, is what it was less about having the perfect data and more about having that right foundation and that mindset to continuously improve it.
So, okay, show of hands, how many folks are starting at like 2 or 3 with your data? No. Okay, so how many folks are starting at 0 with their data? Anybody starting at -6? Jeez. That's what
Don't
I thought.
Don't show.
There's plenty of folks here who can help. Your consumer feedback tool, it isn't really just an agent. It's doing the heavy lifting under the hood using Gemini to get all of that juicy data and intelligence back to the right folks at Mattel. I'm guessing the right tools in place, kind of completely changes the way your team works. Talk to me about the changes in that flow.
Now, for us, it fundamentally changed both speed and confidence of how we operate. The data can now be analyzed in real time, with feedback automatically structured into consistent categories, right? That allows us to move from isolated anecdotes to clear, quantitative views of what's actually happening. So from there, we could slice the data and think about that across brands, price points, categories, even competitors, right? So we tried to understand everything that was going on, whether it was a trend or just noise. And then we could also establish triggers by flagging emerging issues early, and then begin to use those to predictive signals and into the process. Instead of reacting after the fact, we were actually identifying patterns as they form, enabling teams to take action with great speed and precision. We did not deploy AI because it was exciting, even though it really is exciting. We deployed it because it created incredible speed and flexibility for a small team.
Speed, that is my language, Joseph. Okay, I know from what you told me that the market's expectation for cycle time around toys is just completely brutal. If you're going to take months to deliver some insight or intelligence, you're driving in the rearview mirror. You're going to crash one of these beautiful cars. Let's make this real for everybody. Let's talk about the brick shop line. There's one of them right over there.
Yeah.
What were you able to leverage in that intelligence to take on a major competitor who shall not be named?
Yeah, please don't. So we're super excited of our launch of the brick shop line. It is a great example of what speed and data could actually unlock. By mining both our internal data and our external data with competitor signals, we were able to actually identify key opportunities with like customizable builds and actually strong price awareness. So that helped shape early concepts, things like positioning, overall strategy were much more informed than just thinking about it from an instinct alone. What this really came to life was in post-launch. Instead of waiting months to understand how the market was reacting or the product was performing, we actually are able to immediately analyze consumer feedback. We identified what was resonating, what needed adjustment, and we took action in real time. That closed the loop between insight and execution, ultimately improved long-term satisfaction to our consumers while allowing us to compete more effectively in an incredibly competitive category. The insights do not just reduce risk. They really reveal the opportunity and the informed better decision-making to unlock our full potential.
Look, I know when I saw that video the first time, I just put the orange truck in the cart and said,
Oh, you.
Because it's too good. Brick Shop is so good. But let's talk about maybe one of the most legendary brands, Hot Wheels. You told me you used data to make the most significant track improvement in the last 50 years. Walk us through the Speed Snap system.
Hot Wheels is one of our most iconic and loved brands, right? It's had incredible success. But with so many loyal consumers, any minor change really has to be grounded in the consumer perspectives and feedback itself. What a clear signal started to emerge was around the frustration for kids and how the track connectors and the ease of assembly just wasn't there. The challenge opened up the opportunity to improve the existing design and ultimately, most importantly, how we can improve kids' experience. That data became the foundation for the Speed Snap system. It represented the most significant innovation in over 50 years. Think about that, the same track for over 50 years. It allowed us to simplify the build experience, reduce the frustration for kids, and ultimately enhance play value. More importantly, it's a strong example of how data can evolve even our most iconic and established brands using data to drive meaningful innovation and directly improve consumer experience. So we're using that data now, not just to protect what we built, but actually to evolve what we built.
It had to be evolved. Whose younger brothers or older brothers chased you around with a piece of track as a kid? It certainly happened to me.
That's not a use case.
That is not a functional use case of the product. I want to geek out on the architecture for a little bit. This is where the agent work that we did together comes in. Everybody can take a look at the architecture system behind us. That is a visualization environment built at Insight to help us understand the flow of information between the logical building blocks at our customers and the technical systems at Google that embody those functions. You're not building just like a chat bot that sits in the browser. This is something that's actually wired directly into your Jira ticketing system. The agent detects a ticket that's come in, asks the topic attribution model for the data that's relevant to that ticket, and then posts the summary back to the platform automatically. I know I did say that AI is simple. I promise everybody in the audience this is not a 5-minute vibe-coded special. We can do one of those live at our booth if you want. That's at 1321. But this is a little more complex. It is a full sequence application that we built to help best understand the system flow that we designed. This platform is a multi-agent orchestrated system built on Google's ADK. It's running on top of Vertex AI. It's pulling data from their substantial BigQuery data warehousing, and it takes advantage of Google's outstanding Cloud Run, way to go, Starin, for building the rapid deployments that are required to keep pace with the business. The lines here show the relationships and the workflow, the active version of this. You can actually march through the sequence of events to see what happens in the platform. And for you, the red ones, those are the governance lines. So we're keeping that governance is all in check. So for a chief safety officer, that automated loop work, it's not just about IT efficiency. How does having immediate analysis in this workflow, waiting for your team, change how you respond to potential risks?
Yeah, I think this will resonate with everyone, right? So when you think about it, the workflow looked just pretty much like everyone else, right? You had a Jira ticket that was created by someone that flagged a potential product issue. Then we had an analyst that would manually pull all the relevant consumer analyst reviews or data, in the transcripts, read through them, categorize the signal, try to bucketize them, and try to quantify whether they're a real trend or just noise. That process, depending on the product, right, and the volume of feedback, could take days, weeks, maybe even a month, embarrassingly, right? So days matter in consumer product safety. Every day between a signal that's appearing in consumer data and a qualified person actually making a decision, I look at it as an exposure window. What the agent does is reduce that exposure window, right? So now when a ticket gets created in Jira, our consumer feedback classification tool automatically surfaces the classified sentiment data, it bucketizes them by topic, it scores them for confidence, and then it trends them against historical baseline. The analyst walks in on day one with context, right? They're making a judgment call already in advance with the data in hand. And that shift from evidence gathering to decision making, that's exactly what high-performing safety organizations really need to do. My team's value is not in reading 10,000 reviews, right? It's in knowing what to do about what those reviews reveal. That agent handles all that former information. The team could focus on the latter, focus on the decision.
That's the pattern that I hope you're all taking away from all the talks that you're going to see over the next couple of days is decomposing problems, being thoughtful about them, and looking for opportunities to skip a whole step to move forward to the next action. So you've successfully taken this thing from minutes to months. You're delivering insights, minutes, folks, in minutes. Now you're working with my team at Insight to build the next phase using Google AI, a broader conversational agent architecture for all the different parts of the business. Talk to me about moving from a reactive, manual monitoring to a more proactive, agentic workflow. What does that look like when it's all integrated directly to Jira and surfacing issues across your team?
Yeah, so, what it looks like today is it's a much faster, more informed decision, right? You're actually making decisions without removing human judgment. That's really important for us. Before this, as I was mentioning, right, a Jira ticket was created, and analysts had to gather context manually. They had to pull reviews, the service transcripts, and then even the historical data. Then they tried to determine whether this was just noise or if it's real. That, as I mentioned, took days and weeks. Now when a ticket gets created, that context is already there, right? The consumer feedback has been classified, the themes are visible, the signal is grounded in historical patterns. The analyst is not starting from zero. That's starting with evidence. That changes how the team works. We spend less time gathering information and more time evaluating risk, prioritizing action, and deciding what to do next. Importantly, for us, it's still human-led. The agent is not making safety decisions. It is accelerating insight so a qualified expert can actually make a decision faster. That distinction matters in a safety-critical environment. What Insight helped us build is really that foundation. It's governed, it's integrated workflows that bring intelligence directly into the tools that my team was already using. That is what allowed us to move from insight generation to operational impact to predictability.
All right, folks, this is a game we can all play together. How many times you're going to hear the word governance in the next 2 days. I know of how big a driver that was for you and your teams. But if, an AI hallucinates, who's had it say weird stuff before or gets the sentiment wrong, you could sacrifice all of this hard-earned trust, the reputation that you've built, the momentum that you have instantly. You, Joseph, personally, you bear ultimate responsibility. You are here to keep kids safe. That is so impressive to me. How do you make sure the intelligence that it's rock solid, that it's safe before you make these big decisions off of it?
You know, it's probably the question I most get if you think about it. It's the right question to ask, right? The moment you deploy AI in a safety critical context, the burden of proof shifts, right? It's no longer enough to say that the model's accurate and just in testing.
Right.
You have to be able to demonstrate at any point that the outputs are grounded in governed data and that model's performance is being monitored, that a human being with appropriate experience is actually accountable for every decision that flows from it. What we built on Google Cloud is not a public AI tool. It is a secure, enterprise-grade environment where Mattel's proprietary consumer data, things like the reviews, the service transcripts, all the social signals, they never leave our governed perimeter. We developed a strong taxonomy. It's aligned to our quality framework. We run precision and recall measurements. We do human benchmark validation. We monitor for model drift, really important, and we have performance governance. We also calibrate formally with Mattel's Global Technology Organization, our GTO, our Office of AI, our incredible legal staff to ensure that every tool and data source meets enterprise standards before deployment. That cross-functional governance structure, quality working alongside legal and IT, is part of what makes this really sustainable and not just like a one-time pilot.
You're going to watch AI make things go faster. I promise you, you should reinvest some of the savings in governance and structural control. Do it better than you used to be able to do it with the largesse you've earned from these innovations. How do you envision this unified enterprise intelligence layer? Right now we're going to talk about the big version. How does that amplify decision-making in the sales and marketing teams, the other downstream folks that are related?
Yeah, it's probably pretty odd that you're listening to the quality and regulatory guy, right? But I think the quality organization was really the right place to start, and I'll explain why. You know, we had the data foundation and the governance discipline, and frankly, we have the accountability incentive to get it right. But the consumer signal we're sitting on is so valuable, way beyond the quality metrics. Think about what this consumer feedback actually captures. It captures what the consumers love, what kids are frustrated about, what they wish the product did differently, even what language they describe their experience. That's not a quality signal. That's actually a product development signal, a marketing signal, a commercial signal. We're already thinking about how sentiment analysis maps to revenue. Let me just give you an example. If a product star rating could just increase by 1 point, how could that equate to either an increase in number of sales, the number of volume and units sold, or even our relationship with the retailer and positioning it on the shelf, right? This is really what we're trying to build, this model where quality impact becomes quantifiable in commercial terms, not just the cost of quality, but the value of quality. That really changes the conversation with our CEO, the CFO, and our board.
So you're building the Mojo Dojo data warehouse. That sounds good.
We have to IP that.
Yeah, you do. You need that pretty bad. So you're running all this on Google AI, which is, you know, it's cutting edge stuff. They're right at the front line. Right now, you're putting in the architecture to support this across the enterprise level. And now you've moved past these early pilots and touch points, and you have this blueprint for how to do it in a governed, regulatorily compatible, accelerated way. Where else do you see this going, right? I mean, any other places where agents could be tapped to deal with your administrative stuff and make your safety experts be able to focus on the bigger decisions?
You know, I think this is where the actual architecture starts to matter. You know, think about it. What we built in Insight is not just a point solution for quality. And this is where the partnership with GTO and like your team really come together. It's a framework. It's governed data. It's consistent classification, and it creates the workflows that connects insight directly to decision makers. It also opens a door to remove all that friction. Instead of experts spending time trying to stitch all the data together, the agents could actually help surface the right issues, right, at the right context, at the right moment. That increases speed without compromising accountability. This is not about automation for its own sake, right? It's really about putting intelligence in the hands of decision makers and telling experts and letting experts focus on judgment, not administration.
Right.
Now, again, quality was the right place to start because we had the governance discipline, we had the accountability to do it responsibly. But this blueprint scales well beyond quality. And it's how we think about building a unified enterprise intelligence layer over time. So quality has always mattered for Mattel. Now we're building a foundation to quantify how much it matters.
So you've clearly proven that this project has added real material value to the business. As we look to the rest of 2026, without, no secrets, no leaks, we're not gonna do any leaking today, but what's next for Mattel? What's the big piece of consumer friction you think you can tackle with AI?
Yeah, so I can at least just speak for my function. And if you think about it, it talked about the breadth, whether it's quality, regulatory, compliance, distribution, logistics, even sustainability. We were able to identify 68 different active AI projects across our function alone.
Sure.
Ironically, 6 separate teams were actually focused on the same thing. They're actually trying to build a packaging and labeling solution.
Sure.
That created redundant work, compliance exposure, and a space where regulatory precision is non-negotiable. So that convergence problem, I think, is the next frontier. Not more individual products, but a shared architecture, the unified data, unified governance, and unified accountability. I think the longer arc is really where I think I'm most excited. It's partnering with the rest of the business to extend that same intelligence layer that we built for quality into safety by design, but think about now digital products. As Mattel scales digital play, think about things like connected toys, app-based experiences, interactive content. The safety and compliance questions become significantly more complex. And existing regulatory frameworks, unfortunately, they just haven't kept up. So that, I think, is the space where Mattel has an opportunity to lead, and as a practitioner and a voice in that whole policy conversation.
Okay, so I'm sure everybody has realized this last year is a lot of change. Yeah. But if you could go back, get in reverse in the Mercedes, and go back to maybe last year, what impact would you say you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think what I'm most proud of is that we actually used AI in a real production workflow, right? And we made it matter. We moved from reactive monitoring to proactive discovery to predictive analytics. We quantified the business impact with quality decisions, and we strengthened our consumer trust by turning their voice, kids' voice, into actual action, right? This was not a lab experiment. This really changed the decisions across the business. And at the end of the day, insights only matter if it changes a decision, right? That's what Mattel does today.
You got a whole bunch of people right here that I think are going to do everything they can to follow in your footsteps, right? And your team, they've worked really hard on this project. If you have advice to give, what's a piece of advice you'd hand out?
So I think there's 2 pieces of advice I'd give, and I think they go hand in hand, right? The first, and I always say this, what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? Be precise about the question before engaging the technology. The biggest challenges are not technical, as long as you have a partner. But what comes from the lack of clarity, that's the challenge. AI will generate, as Miles said, lots of answers. But if the question's not well defined, that output will not be meaningful. And I always say this, clarity of intent is critical. Second, treat governance as an enabler. I know governance is not the sexy word, but don't treat it as a constraint. In a regulated environment, governance is what allows you to move with speed and, more importantly, confidence. Without it, you either stall progress or you just can create a solution that can't withstand scrutiny. The right approach, discipline speed, establish the taxonomy, validate the outputs, and really instrument the model, and then scale. The teams that succeeded were the ones that combined a clear problem statement with a strong governed foundation.
Everybody, first off, give Joe a big round of applause. If you are not trying to organize around governing and building for speed, this is going to feel like a weird year for you. We have some time that's free for questions. I'd love to give some Hot Wheels to folks who ask. So if you have a question, I know there are mic runners that are in the line. Just raise your hand. Up front.
You're taking the hard ones.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you. The architecture diagram was overwhelming. And congratulations for finishing this. Like, I believe this is truly in production, and that could take you, to the next levels. I have one question. When you implement this, most of the time when an established business enterprise goes to the agentic world, we see different challenges in terms of friction from different departments. And even in the diagram I saw, there is a schema RAG registry being shown, but there was no, schema registry was not there, but then vector search was connected with the schema, storage. My question is, in some cases, there might be reviewers or internal enterprise architect team or some team who will be creating, challenges to such an implementation. How did you overcome this? And how was this, was it, started as a POC and then quickly adopted to every department? How was it handled?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I hate being called shadow IT, right? We're really a partner. And I think the relationship with the IT is really important, the GTO. What we decided to do is be incredibly transparent, really work with them within their constraints, their engagement, help them alongside with a partner that could be trusted. And I think that really started breaking down barriers. But they're real, right? Who owns the data? Who controls the data? Who controls the framework? Who controls the platform? Mm-hmm. In my team, they pounded on me. It's about the platform. It's about the data. It's the platform. It's the data. And trying to make sure GTO really understood that's what we were trying to build as the foundation. We didn't want a one-off solution. We were glad to start it, but we were glad to give it back to them to say, you take it and run it, make it bigger.
We sit together with teams all the time and get the list of all of their needs, right? What does the regulatory group need in order to do their part of the job? So once I have all of their requirements, the finance team need, what does the legal team need, what does the dev team need? Once I have those needs articulated, then I'm building in a way that respects their requirements. And frankly, most of the time, I'm trying to build their end outputs to their stakeholders, right? Like, why make them come into my app and do all the work? Let me do the work for you. Another question.
Hi.
On the right, cheers.
Earlier you alluded to groups that are kind of duplicating efforts. I see a lot of teams that are saying, hey, let's roll with AI. We're putting out a lot of different products, but internal tools that people are using, but there's a lot of duplication. People are using a lot of tokens and a lot of effort to all create kind of the same sort of thing. It sounds like you may have seen a little bit of that inside your company. How do you kind of get your arms around that and keep people focused so that you're not duplicating a lot of effort and wasting a lot of time and resources?
Yeah, and in quality in our data, we can't take all the credit, right? We have an incredible consumer insights team that does a lot of data crunching and a lot of sentiment analysis. We have incredible play labs that interact with children so we can get their feedback. So it's really a triangulation of a lot of different data. And at the moment, I think you're right. Each one of us have tackled the issue a little bit differently. I think what we've tried to prove, and with GTO's help and with Miles' team, is really that foundation, this governance, so that the other teams could start building off of it. And I think that's where we start coming together.
We built a tool on our side that's a shared, centralized Kanban board that every employee has access to. And when you present an idea, you put your name on it so you know who's working on it. And there's an AI module inside that's finding matches. Hey, you three are working on the same thing. You should have lunch, right? That's the move, is just use these tools to help you coordinate. Look, we have just a couple of minutes left. I want to be clear. Thank you so much. One, to everybody who attended. Two, to all the production folks back of house, made this thing super easy for all of us. Marketing team is spectacular. We have a whole bunch of sessions. You can come later this afternoon. We'll do a full stack improv. We'll build an app from scratch while you watch. You can tell us what you want to do. There's sessions all throughout the day, and please feel free to come visit us. It's booth 1321. It's just 2 to the left from the entrance. More than happy to talk shop, get into the details of how this all works. Thank you so much for taking the time, and have a great next. Thank you.